Shalom, shalom, family. Congregation Bay D.C.B. presents a day of praise to the Most High. Unity Shabbat Kun, we must rise. Date, May 27, 2023. Location, Shell's Loft, Brooklyn. Located at 120 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Services will begin at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. To contact us for more information, you can contact us at 347-622-9090 or on our email, info@baydcb.org. Once again, Congregation Bay D.C.B. presents a day of praise to the Most High. Unity Shabbat Kun, we must rise. The date is May 27, 2023. The location, Shelf's Lord, Brooklyn, located at 120 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Services will begin at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can contact us at 347-622-9090 on our email, info@baydcb.org. This is a time of praise and joy and coming together between brothers and sisters. All are invited. Come out with your best spirit of praise. Hallelujah.
By the rivers of Babylon, yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying.
Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome to another Tanakh review. My name is Zurishaddai, one of the teachers of Congregation CHOKMAH, BINAH, located in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York. Our address is 382 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Our zip code is 11231. Thanking the Creator of heaven and earth for all things and everything, food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Thanking the Most High God for our lives, waking us up this morning, for allowing us to be here, to take in this these words and the scriptures. To everyone out there, it's just saying Shabbat Shalom, or early Shabbat Shalom to everyone out there, praying that the Most High God has found your week to be a blessed one. And I pray the Creator will continue to bless each and every one of you. I know there's many of you out there that are listening to us, so we don't take that for granted. So we're gonna move straight ahead, and I believe that today Nasik is gonna go into Psalms 26 and Psalm 15, and that is for last week's Torah portion is Atonement and Kedoshim. So thanking the Most High God and praying that the Most High God be with the Nasik, and without any further ado, I introduce to you Nasik Zurishaddai ben Yehudah. Hallelujah.
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to give praise to the Supreme Eternal Universe God, my forefathers, God, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the respective platform on D.C.B. channel platform, spiritual leader, Chief Prince Area up in Saska, host Chief Uzael, to the Princess Chief, Rabbinate Kohanim, Maureen, brothers and sisters, visitors, greet you all in the time of forefathers. Shalom Aleichem and an early Shabbat Shalom. I'd like to first say, Adonai Sabtadi Takofi Agiti Latheka. O Lord, open down my lips, and my mouth shall declare thy praise. We'll be covering this particular portion. It's a double portion, one of the first double portions that's coming up. I came up, which was be Atonement and Kedoshim, and we'll be touching on a few parts in both of them. And was interesting. Last we just finished, last week a double portion, which was Tazria and Mesorah. So we left from Tazria and Mesorah, and now we into the portion Atonement and Kedoshim. Like we often say, and I like to remind people that the scriptures is not written in a chronological order all the time. So sometimes you have to really pay attention to small details in it to try to figure out at what time they are speaking about in the particular portion of the scriptures. So I'm just going to give you the part so people can study on their own. And I always like to leave that out there because I don't want anyone to take everything I say and that's it. I want you to do your own research, make your own discoveries in the Sidra, and even enhance what I present before you in the Sidra. First of all, the part of Akwemot, which means after the death, it starts from Leviticus, the 16th chapter, first verse, go to the 18th chapter, the 30th verse. That's where it concludes at. Then Kedoshim, or most people say Kedoshim, will start from the 19th chapter of Leviticus, the first verse, and go to the 20th chapter, the 27th verse. Now, those that have studied, followed the Torah, if you have a Ashkenazic custom or tradition, then you will be reading for Akwemot, Amos, the 9th chapter, 7th verse to the 15th. The Sephardim happen to use Ezekiel 22nd chapter, 1 to 16. When it comes to the next portion, Kedoshim, they go from Ezekiel, the Ashkenazi use Ezekiel after Torah, 22nd chapter, 1 to 19. That's for Kedoshim. For the Sephardim, they use Ezekiel 20th chapter, starting from the 2nd verse to the 20th verse. The Psalms that go along with Akwemot, that they contribute or connect with Akwemot, is Psalms 26. It's relatively a short psalm. And the psalm that they connect with Kedoshim is Psalm 15. All right, so we'll be, I'm just going to highlight some things in reference to Akwemot. So I'll be coming from the 16th chapter, first verse, and I'd like to share some excerpts in reference to this particular portion. Now, we know last time we was talking about women with children, circumcision, women with children, ritual impurities, and about Zara'at, those impurities that's there in Zara'at itself, and some of the descriptions of the 3 different places where Zara'at would happen, which is on a person's skin, on a person's clothes, or within a house. They have an interesting tradition, which I didn't share last time, which is that sometimes it might be a lesson or warning to the individual. If you have it in your house, it could be. So, a lot of people always contributed to gossip. We were talking about a Mesera, which are what they translate as a leper, from a lot of evil gossip. And so one tradition has where they would say that the Creator will warn you first by having something strike in your house. Then next it might, if that don't get your attention, then you get it, striking in your clothes. If that don't get your attention, then when it hits your skin, then your attention is gotten there. Another area you could view it from is that if it hit the house, we was told that we're going to have vineyards that we planted not, live in houses which we built not. So some people, everybody didn't walk around with a safe. Some people didn't bury their stuff just strictly outside underground. Some people buried their stuff in the walls of the houses. And you notice that some houses have a wall safe. Well, sometimes when we get rid of the inhabitants of the land and we took over the houses, sometimes it might be, you might be worthy of knowing where that treasure is hidden. So the Creator would possibly, if you're worthy enough, make that sign hit that particular house. Not because you're gossip, because you're worthy. And when you go to the house and dig out that, you got to take the spot out. Sometimes you got to take the piece out, the plaster, the replaster, or the brick out, and you might discover something of value behind that. So sometimes, that showing up in your house could be a particular blessing. Now, on the other hand, if it shows up in the house and then it shows up on your skull and your clothes, then that's a real close warning, because that goes on your body. And if it shows on your body, then that's a problem, a serious problem. All right, so now we get this this new law, akwemo, after the death. And I'll read the first verses in 16th chapter, first verse. And the Lord spoke unto Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron, when they drew near before the Lord and died. And the Lord said unto Moses, speak unto Aaron thy brother, that he come not at all times into the holy place within the veil, before the ark which is upon, before the ark cover which is upon the ark, that he die not. For I will appear in the cloud upon the cover, ark cover. Herewith shall Aaron come into the holy place with a young bullock for a sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering, and shall put on the holy linen tunics, and shall have the linen breeches upon his flesh, and he shall be girded with linen girdle, and with the linen mitre shall he be attired. They are the holy garments. He shall bathe his flesh in water and put them on. All right, now, and then just read maybe another verse of that. And you should take, of the congregation of the children of Israel 2 he-goats for a sin offering, and 1 ram for a burnt offering. All right, so now, when Moses said, after Nadab and Abihu was actually slain by God because they offered strange fire, and fire came out from the Creator and destroyed them, that Moses said God will be sanctified by those that come nigh him. But we didn't read Moses getting this information at the time. We read when Aharon was silent, then God gave him a command and law concerning how he shall operate in the holy area. So he got a law about the details of it. So that you could say, was Moses enlightening Aaron for the first time about the details of the Holy of Holies, going into that? Or he had to bring some other details that was not mentioned, and when Aaron was got some instructions about going into the holy place. So we find different details being omitted there, but this is at the same time, right after those 2 guys, Aaron's sons, were destroyed. Aaron got some information from God directly, independent of Moses, and Moses got some other information from God in detail that add on to what we haven't read prior. All right, so now one of the details we discover as we go into this here, that he will have to go in there one time a year just to save time. All right, so but it talk about 2 goats that he got to present. It gives you the time, and it says that he goes for a sin offering and 1 ram for a burnt offering. And Aaron shall present the bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make an atonement for himself and for his house. And he shall take the 2 goats and set them before the Lord at the door of the tent of meeting. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the 2 goats, 1 lot for the Lord and the other lot for Azazel. All right, now what is interesting is that you mean to tell me the Creator spoke to Aaron, he spoke to Moses, and yet he getting other laws of this strict caliber. And then now, at this point in time, I got these 2 goats that's presented, and you can't tell me verbally which one to use. I got to leave it up to chance, so to speak. I got to pull lots, as we would say these days in time, roll the dice and say, this is, or spin the wheel. So this is where they're going to land here, or they're going to land there. These are 2 identical goats. And say 1 for the Lord and 1 for Azazel. And you say, well, who is this Azazel? And what's this all about? There's many legends and discussions in reference to it. But I just, normally when I speak on it, I just say 1 for dismissal and leave that for the various teachers of the various congregations to discuss in detail. What do they mean by Azazel? Because if it's for Azazel, some people would get the idea, is it demonic? Is it another sacrifice? Would this be a prohibition against Torah doing this particular ritual? But we're given instructions. And then we know it cannot be a prohibition against Torah because this is coming from the Creator to Moses. And so to the outside, it would seem like we're getting ready to sacrifice to some strange deity or element, that demon or spirit. But then when we think about our second command, and we shouldn't have no images of any likeness of anything in the heavens above or the earth beneath or the waters under the earth, we have within the Holy of Holies, when they speak about the ark cover, you had these cherubims, most people say cherubim, the cherubims, angelic looking beings with their wings outstretched towards one another on the ark cover. And you say, well, why we have those there? Because that's the order of the Creator and their purpose is stated in their order. So that's not an image that we're supposed to worship. That was an order from God as a prerequisite part of how what they consider the mercy seat, as they refer to later on in certain portions. So, but that's one of the strange things, because normally in Torah and the will of God, we're told to do this or we're told not to do this, But while we have these 2 goats here, it is Aaron going to cast lots to find out which one of the goats are going to be for the Lord and which one will be sent to Azazel. So that's one of the mysteries that we have here. And the 9th verse, it says, and Aaron shall present the goat upon which the lot fell for the Lord, and shall offer him for a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell for Azazel shall be set alive before the Lord to make an atonement over him, to send him away for Azazel into the wilderness. And Aaron shall present the bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself, and shall make an atonement for himself and for his house, and shall kill the bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself. And he shall take a censer full of coals of fire from off the altar before the Lord, and his handful of sweet incense beaten small, and bring it within the veil, and shall put the incense upon the fire before the Lord, that the cloud of the incense may cover the ark cover that is upon the testimony, that he die not. So now when we look at this last thing, he have incense, but where he's told to take the fire from. We know he had 2 sons that were destroyed because of strange fire. Now this procedure will take place basically 7 months. 7 months, close, give it a couple of weeks, from the time of the dedication of the tabernacle. This actual procedure that Aaron was about to perform. So that means that they was killed on Rosh Chodesh of the month of Aviv. So now 7 months later, Aaron is supposed to be preparing to do and follow this particular ritual. And we're going to get that information within this particular chapter. But I'm just going to try to speed up just a little bit. And shall take of the blood of the bullock and sprinkle it with his finger upon the ark cover on the east, and before the ark cover shall he sprinkle of the blood with his finger 7 times. Right? So, but in the 15th verse, it says, then shall kill the goat of the sin offering that is for the people, and bring the blood within the veil, and do with his blood as he did with the blood of the bullock, and sprinkle it upon the ark cover and before the ark cover. And he shall make atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel, and because of their transgressions, even all their sins. And so shall he do for the tent of meeting that dwelleth with them in the midst of their uncleanness. So now, you mean to tell me, as holy as the tabernacle is, and we go to get rid of sins, it builds up. The sins actually somewhat builds up in the tabernacle, where it had to be purified. Not only the people that worked there, but actually the utensils had to be purified. Now, that should tell you something. And that leaves a lot of discussions. Why is it? Now, we know we have different midrashic sayings and stuff like that, that the Torah is so holy that even a menstruating woman cannot defile it. That's, one of them sayings. I listen to it. I have an idea what they're trying to present. But in fact, if the Mishkan itself, that the first one they built, under the directions that the Creator had given, had to be purified once a year for all the sins of the children of Israel. The Mishkan haven't done anything wrong, but it had to go through a purification process. Just like the woman who has a child. She haven't done anything wrong by having a child, but she got to go through a purification process. So then the saying that most people will say, the Mishkan gonna still be the Mishkan. The woman gonna still be the woman. But the defilement had to be dealt with. The purification had to be, brought back to the particular entity, that particular item. So I would say that you could discuss those things with your teachers too, those that follow tradition, certain midrashim, and some things we listen to, but we also have a mind to analyze. And I employ people to use your own intellect to a degree to analyze, as well as listen to other viewpoints and see how you arrive at those, whether you arrive at the same conclusions or you have a different viewpoint. And I always caution people to say that all viewpoints was not written out. That's why people still making comments today. If all the viewpoints was ever, brought out, we could never walk around with the book. If all the history of the individuals that lived in the book was brought out, we could never walk around and carry the book. So it's certain things that made it, some things that was, exceptional, and some things that just didn't, was recorded down. So that being said, I want to go just a little bit further in this, about this here, because now in the 20, I'm skip on all, okay, we're gonna skip on down past the ritual part of this here. And we're gonna go all the way down in this particular portion where we know also the once the scapegoat is once they're sacrificing, do the thing with the sin offering, that, well, I think I better read on this here in the 21st verse. All right. And when he had made an end of atoning for the holy place and the tent of meeting and the altar, he shall present the live goat, and Aaron shall lay both his hands upon the head of the live goat and confess over them all the iniquities of the children of Israel and all their transgressions, even all their sins, and shall put them upon the head of the goat, and shall send him away by the hand of an appointed man into the wilderness. Now, I just want to bring that one little point out there. One, it just said appointed man to the wilderness. We're already out there in the wilderness. And I find that's a point to consider. And it used the word ish, et, a man of the time. Spelled with et, in the sense of ayin and tall. We know 8 means like a time frame. All right, so it's the man of the time that is whoever he is. And it say it had to be a Levite. And then say, it had to be, it definitely wouldn't have been, too much of a priest in that area there. But that means an ordinary individual that's qualified. Now, one of the things I like to focus on is that this ain't going to be a guy's regular job. You can't say, I did it last year, so I should do it this year. You can't say, well, it's my turn now, because he had a chance at it. It's an appointment, and it doesn't specify how this guy is appointed to do this particular job. And also, one interesting point, it used that word, Aaron should put his hand in the singular. In Hebrew, they have this thing, from the Masoretic text, is that you're supposed to, you'll see something written one way and read it and pronounce it another way. And one in the case here, they use the hand of Aaron in the singular as opposed to in the plural. So, and those that read Hebrew. And we have a thing that they did, that they had a custom of, what they call samikah, which is actually when a person goes and be ordained as a rabbi, and the guy, actually put his hands upon an individual that's, graduating or going through the process of being a rabbi. So now, since it said a hand, one, you go ask, which hand, left or right? That's one thing. We know when we go to courts today, you say, put your right hand, and put your right hand on the Bible and then raise your left hand. Or sometimes they put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand. One or the other. But anyway, you put one hand on the Bible and raise your hand. All right. But here it is that most people are right-handed, and usually if you're going to do a favor for somebody, they always figure, traditionally use the right hand. Usually a left-handed person, I know it's a lot more left-handed people these days than it was when I was a kid, but they usually consider the left-handed person something in a negative light because it wasn't a majority. Normality means a majority. So why the books translate both hands, and why the Masoretes want you to write pronounce it like it's both hands on there, because they had their various reasons. So I'll just leave that for discussion. Matter of fact, I'll leave it for discussion for different people. But it's in the singular that he put one hand on the scriptures and he used both hands. And we have a semblance of that when we deal with Moses' succession. The first example of somebody being promoted to, to replace somebody where you actually had hands on, other than Aaron's sons, because Aaron's sons already, Eleazar, and I just want to bring that out. He was already a priest, a Kohen. He already was a Kohen. But when his father, it was time for his father to make his transition and die, that Moses took the clothes off his father and put it on his son. That was an investment, but that was a lineage that had to go to a son. But when Moses was making a replacement, such as Joshua, the Creator told him, put your hand on Joshua and in front of all the elders in the congregation, and strengthen him there. But Moses took both hands, so they understood it. That anytime that you're gonna really do a promotion or elevation or anything like that, it's both hands on it. So when Aaron put his hands on his goat that we're going to say is the scapegoat and confess all the sins of Israel, sometimes in the prayer book they got what you call a portion that they pronounce vidui, which is all the sins and confessions that they did, or people do. So they call it vidui. He recites all those sins. Now, one, we got to think about how great Aaron's mind was, or to be able to recount all those transgressions that a person might do. That's phenomenal. What kind of mind he had to remember them and not be repeating. Some of us can't say a prayer for 2 minutes without repeating, being redundant. Aaron had to, enumerate all the sins of the whole nation, any possible things that's going on. And then what's so ironic is that you can't make up a sin that's not been done. That's something that we don't focus on. When you confess the sins of Aaron the priest, supposed to confess the sins of the nation, then everything he confessed, somebody in the nation had done it. In order for it to be a true confession, or else you'd be lying. See, that's some things we don't think about. That if you're making this confession, it got to be something that somebody in the nation done. You can't have a false confession. So whether he know who did it or not, that's another thing. Because he goes into the Holy of Holies and do his thing and come on out. So the Creator is working with the high priest, the Cohen, and he's the busiest man on this particular day. And we know it's going to be on Yom Kippur. I'm just going to speed through it. It's going to be on Yom Kippur, which is on the 7th month, the 10th day of the month, that this process go on, one day in the year. And you have a lot of people that only come out on Yom Kippur, especially those that's pretty much follow rabbinic, believe in a rabbinic tradition. They might not come to synagogue or the Knesset or every Shabbat. Sometimes they might not come out on, so a lot of them come out on Pesach, but a lot of times may not come out on Pesach. They'll come out on Shavuot more so than Pesach, because Pesach, they tend to follow another tradition where it's more important to do it at home amongst your family. So they find it more conducive in that area. But they only will come on Yom Kippur. So imagine now that this is taking place on Yom Kippur, and people coming out with all these different, hearing all these sins and confession, and no one person could do all that. No one person could be guilty of all that. And yet we say we. Some of the stuff I can't even begin to think about, but we say we, because we are our brother's keeper in this here, in this area here. And then another thing I'd like to point out before I move forward is that the man that's appointed to take it away is a goat without blemish. Nothing wrong with it. Healthy little nice goat. And all the sins is on, all the sins of the people is placed on the head of the goat. And you say, how do you transfer sin? How could that happen? How could a goat head hold all of a nation's sin? Was it small enough? Was it big enough? All these questions, just something to think about. And he goes off by himself. So now, how is his thoughts? Do you say, well, we don't need to get rid of the goat. I can use him. I mean, the goat coming along and nice and easy, it seemed nice to goat. Why should it leave him to himself where predators could get him or whatever happened to him? So the man that's appointed for that particular time got to understand the importance of him doing his own job. And his job is not just for him, but for the nation. Because if Aaron had to make an atonement for himself in his household before he could make an atonement for the nation of Israel, then surely this man had to have some things he had to answer for in his life and himself. So that's a greater responsibility, as far as I can see, but you can discuss it amongst various teachers who have the greatest responsibility. Aaron, who's working around the safety of the Mishkan and the presence of other people's presence, or the individual who had to walk out with this goat by himself to a place uninhabited. That means he's there alone and make it back. And wondering if this thing gonna jump on him. Most of us seen pictures like The Exorcist and all that kind of stuff. So just something to consider as we move forward, in some of the teachings. So just so much for that. When they talk about slaughtering, we got laws concerning slaughtering the animals and stuff like that. So we're gonna move past that, and we got laws concerning about eating blood in this particular portion, sacrificing the false gods, and it's right in the same area where we talk about bringing the goat to Azazel. We talk about forbidden meats in this particular chapter. Certain meats you're never supposed to eat, and it knows there's a difference between who could eat certain things that's torn of itself and certain things that's not. And blood is definitely forbidden for everyone. All right. Now I'd like to go into the 18th chapter just a little bit, of this, and it says, "And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, I am the Lord your God, after the doings of the land of Egypt, wherein ye dwell, shall ye not do. And after the doings of the land of Canaan, whither I bring you, shall ye not do. Neither shall ye walk in their statutes. My ordinances shall ye do, and my statutes shall ye keep, to walk therein. I am the Lord your God. You shall therefore keep my statutes and my ordinances, which if a man do, he shall live by them. I am the Lord." So the Lord God teach us to live, not to die. And that's why in some cases we have to evaluate. The judges of the time got to evaluate when we have to be able to relax a certain law because of a certain condition. Now we know we're not supposed to work on the Shabbat, but yet a person wind up taking a nasty fall, a spill, and they not only gashed it, they said one of their limbs, but they broke it. So then the guy that's right nearby is a doctor. Do the doctors say, my profession is being in the medical profession, This is Shabbat. It was the will of God that this guy got hurt. Or will it be the will of God that I step out of my role as a doctor and pick on the role as a humane individual, a compassionate individual, and help this individual, even though it's on the Shabbat day. So those are some things that we got to understand and discuss more. When, you know, and this is where it's taken from. If the law is meant for us to live therein, then how would you live if certain things happen and you say, I'm too holy to do this. I can't do that, you know, at this particular point in time. Sometimes you will have to say, okay, I got to pray for certain things, but I got to do what would be the godly thing to do in light of what's there. Not saying that the law is no good. What we're saying is that the law is meant for us to live by, and it become human life becomes, you know, precious, not only for me, but for in the eyesight of the Creator more so. All right, so I just want to bring that point out a little bit, and then it goes on about chastity, about certain relationships. All right, but you notice it says, we always think about these things that they did in the land of Canaan, like we never experienced this, but we're coming out of the land of Egypt, and all the stuff is talked about in this 18th chapter, the forbidden relationships in the 18th chapter. Those things we already knew about in the land of Egypt, because it says in the land of Egypt, where you from? In the land of Canaan, where you going? So this was a worldwide thing going on. So today we have all this thing, you know, what they call, you know, transgender and stuff like that. You know, you don't know, is the man a man or the man's a woman? You know, he decided to determine his sex, or she decided to determine her sex. That's the society we're in today. But when we deal with the laws of God, you have certain rules. Now, I would even venture, this is just me saying this myself, that if a guy feels that he's feminine, and you say, I feel like I'm a woman, then keep that to yourself and don't mess with nobody else. Then you won't be violating with the Creator. But if you want to procreate, you have to have a female, because your sex is not determined by you. Your sex was determined by the Creator in your birth. You know, so the Creator determined your sex, not you determining your sex. So and so we got to realize that in itself, because it's the involvement of these things that is a problem. And it says that this is something that we know to happen, even in some of our genealogy. All right, so we're gonna move on from that. And before we get to the last part, and let's talk about lustful acts and being defiled by those lustful acts. But the last verse of the 18th chapter, the 30th verse says, therefore shall you keep my charge, that you do not any of these abominable customs. You notice it said it's a custom, a tradition, which were done before you, and that you defile not yourselves therein. I am the Lord your God. That means you've seen this happen. That's how it ends. You've seen this. You know what's going on in Egypt. Everything goes. Now we're going to a part we call Kedoshim. So now we left off after the death of Aaron's sons, and say, well, remind us about certain things about how Aaron should conduct himself in the ritual where his sons actually died trying to perform a ritual. Aaron's told what to perform, how to perform it, and when to perform a particular ritual, and how they should be dressed. You read where, and when we look back at Nadab and Abihu, it told in this particular portion when Moses was given, that what kind of garments Aaron supposed to have when he go into the Holy of Holies. We didn't read where the other priests had even changed any outfits on that most holiest day they had. Most likely, and the Father looking good, they're going to be looking good. They had special garments made for them. But though the special garments made for them, is a certain type of garment you got to wear when you go into that Holy of Holies. Head that direction. And the incense that you be burning in your censer pan, if you go, you have to have that burning before you go in there and make a smoke before you go in there in the Holy of Holies. So there's a lot of things you can look about the death of Aaron's sons and analyze it and compare to what the Lord's given later on in this here book. So the 19th chapter, it says that the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, speak unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, and say unto them, ye shall be holy, for I, the Lord, your God, am holy. All right, so now, some of the issues we got to figure out is, how is it, how is it, what makes you holy? It's a command to be holy, but what makes you holy? And how holy should you get? Is there such thing as being over holy? A lot of people like to use that sometimes. Usually people that be envious of you will say, oh, you're being over holy. Instead of saying, that's not what holiness is about. You have a misunderstanding of holiness. They rather say you over holy. Either you're holy or you're not. There's no such thing as being over holy. But we use that, we throw those terms around greatly. And then the Creator said that He's holy and we're holy. And holy means separate, and separate, for a sanctity, it sanctifies basically another term in English, it means cleanse. But separation sometimes is good. In the beginning of Genesis, we have a lot, separation a lot. In the beginning, in the book of Genesis, the first chapter, there's a lot of terms of separation is being used there in the book of Genesis. But so sometimes you got to stand out and stand different. And then this is a command and a suggestion coming from the Most High. And it goes on and say, you shall, I'm just going to read a couple of these and then we'll move on. All right. You shall fear every man his mother and his father, and shall keep my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. Now, in the Decalogue, Exodus 20th chapter, the Shabbat is the fourth command. And then it says, honor your father and your mother. All right. So here, they just reverse it. Not only the order of the Shabbat coming after, the respect that's given to a parent, but also within the verse of honor, your father and your mother, it talks about reverence, fear, his mother and his father. There's a certain type of reverence. Every man should fear, his mother and his father. So now they make the child equally have respect equally for their parents. Most people in this society here talk about their mother, respect their mother, but they don't respect their father. And especially, people of color, my people. They tend to, rather great athletes. I like to think my mom's so and so. So God might be somewhere in there once in a while. And my manager, my coaches, my fans. But you usually don't hear father too much. And, but here it is. That's why in the Decalogue, it says, honor your father first. Because most people don't honor their father first, because they introduced to their father basically by their moms, by their mother. They know their mother first. They become familiar with their mother first. So therefore, it'll be natural for them to honor their mother, but it wouldn't be so natural for them to honor their father. But then in this particular verse, it says, every man should fear his mother and his father. Now, we know, especially guys, and I grew up around my time, that you have no problem having that fear of your father if you did something out of order. But you figure you could talk to your moms and work it out. You could get away with it with your mother and work it out. So that makes a unique difference in those areas there. So when we look at those areas there, that the law is reversed for a particular reason. And then let's go on this. I'm going to fast forward just on another little bit of spot here. And talk about, laws of righteous living, atonement for unrighteous lust, sins to be avoided. But before we go down any further, punishment for sins of lust. So it talks about, your mannerism and how you deal with people. It's not, it's not a free for all love. And they used to talk about love everybody. You got to have love. We had the hippie movement one time before most of y'all that's alive now. I mean, just looking at the video, the young guys was born. They had what they call the love child movement and all this stuff. And everybody love everything, let everything be about love. Well, you can't exercise love in that fashion like that. Love got to be channeled. When we look further here, it talks about, I'm going to just pick out the 20th chapter, one particular instance in the 20th chapter, the 17th verse, before I move on. And let me see if I get it up here. All right, and 20th chapter of Leviticus, the 17th verse, which is interesting. It says, and if a man shall take his sister, his father's daughter, or his mother's daughter, and see her nakedness, and she sees his nakedness, is a shameful thing, and they shall be cut off in the sight of the children of their people. He hath uncovered his sister's nakedness, and he shall bear his iniquity. It's not like just one-sided. All right, in the Hebrew, let me get that chapter right quick. Did I flip it over? Which you find interesting words and how they use in certain terms. In the 17th verse, in 17th verse in Hebrew, it says, let me get my extra good glasses after this. In the Hebrew 17th verse, it says, Zurishaddai Yakah et akoto. All right. So it's telling you if a man, a man that taketh, his sister, Ba'abi, daughter of his father, or, which is a regular, or Ba'imo, daughter of his mother, and wherever et erata, and to see the necklace, and where he, which she, and she see et rata, his nakedness, and they use the word kesed, who nekorito, right? Kesed, who when ritu, that means right then and there, it's a disgrace, he should be cut off. Now, why just he? Why don't say they? It seems like they should say they cut off. And they use the word kesed. Kesed itself is usually translated as loving kindness. It's used mostly as a kindness when you talk about kesed. So that's a strange term to be used in a negative sense. When the majority of times when we read, but in the Proverbs, when you go into Proverbs, I believe, let me see where I got it. When we look at Proverbs 14:34, it says, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. And then when they use the word reproach us, and they use the word kesed again. But most times when we see the word kesed, it means in a sense that it's an act of loving kindness. So why would they use that word there? Because if he approach her and he see her nakedness, she sees his nakedness, he has that love for her. So sometimes it don't be actually a lust, like we read earlier in the earlier portions, where the guy just lust and do this and lust to do that, just out of a pure love, and no kind of feelings for the individual. Here it is, when we get to this particular portion in the 20th in holiness, it's like this guy genuinely loved his sister. Abraham genuinely loved Sarah. Now, we know traditionally some people will say, rabbinically, they'll say that was his niece, whatever the case is, but we got that violation on that as well later. But according to the Tanakh, he referred to as a sister. But when we said, so even if you have a pure, genuine feeling for the individual, if then part of those forbidden things that's mentioned in Leviticus, the 18th chapter, and reiterated more so in the 20th chapter, then that is love that's misused and not channeled in the proper direction. That's why when people say, I just love everybody, well, a certain love that you gotta channel. Hence the generation of love, where they at now, because you could abuse certain things and use it in the wrong area. So I'm gonna stop right there in that area there in reference to those areas about those particular areas in that dealing with that. And the last thing it talks about in this particular portion, the 26th verse, it says, and ye shall be holy unto me, for I, the Lord, am holy, and have set you apart from the peoples, that you should be mine. So that means that we are designated for a job. That's all, as Israelites. We're designated for a particular job. So and the Creator chose us to do that. And then the last verse, it says, or the last part of it says, and a man also, or a woman that divineth by a ghost or a familiar spirit shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with stones. Their blood shall be upon them. Now that's for us. Some people say that's for anybody, but the Lord's given to us. So if we employ those things, now I always tell people it's not a violation to know about them, but you can't judge what you don't know. All right, so we're going to go straight to the Psalms. We're going to do Psalms 26 first. That goes along with Akre Mo. And then we're going to go over to the Psalm 15, back in Psalm 15. So we do Psalms 26 first. That goes with that. And I'm not going to elaborate as much. So most likely you're going to have to go back over yourself and look at it. It's in the first book. And these Psalms, both Psalms about David, King David. So we got the 26th Psalm, Chief.
Give me 1 second. Got you right now.
Okay.
We are going to go to Psalms 26. Psalms 26. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
A psalm of David. Judge me, O Yehovah, for I have walked in mine integrity. I have trusted in Yehovah without wavering. Examine me, O Yehovah, and try me. Test my reins and my heart.
Hold right there. Now, when David says this, we wonder what stage of his life he said that. Because most of the Psalms, people after me. People doing this here, I'm better than them. And we know that the apologetic Psalm, the 51st Psalm, when he dealt with that matter with Uriah the Hittite and Bathsheba, could he say that in that particular time? So, and he noticed, he said, judge me, accord, and it's one thing when people say, a lot of people today say, judge not lest ye be judged. That means a bunch of wrong people want to get away doing the wrong things. But David told him, judge me, and he's saying, look, I walk according to what I believe to be right. But he ain't satisfied with what he believed to be right. He was wholeheartedly into it. Some people do certain things, and they honestly and in all earnest say, this is what I believe to be right. And sometimes it could be wrong, but they earnestly believe it to be right. It's almost like some of our parents and relatives that might have a different religious ideology than ours. And they pray and they do this and do that. And they firmly believe, that it's the will of God. And when they make decisions, they firmly going to make the decisions according to the ideology that they trust in. And David's saying at this particular time, I'm not looking for you to leave it to me like that. I want you to judge me according to that, And he said, I trusted in the Lord without wavering. That means I didn't make a mistake. I didn't say, Lord, well, things going hard now. Things now up to snuff now. I don't know if God going to pull me through this one. David said, I didn't never had that kind of feeling. That's what he's saying. Nobody could convince me that you're not able. That's what David's saying right here in this psalm. So why is that? Because this psalm goes along with Akrimot. This is after the death of Aaron's 2 sons. This is when Aaron was told by Moses that God would be sanctified by those who come nigh me. And so now Aaron is giving about how he's going to approach the Holy of Holies once a year during the month of Ethanim on Yom Kippur, the holiest day, for Israelites to try to make an atonement. And he got to be correct because he go inside the Holy of Holies at least 5 times, changing clothes 10 times, offering on a normal day, if it don't be on a Shabbat itself, 15 sacrifices. So he's very busy that particular day. And he's told on that particular day, when everybody trying to plead for their sins and atone for their sins, that he could be the first one to possibly die. So now, when you look at David, the priest, the HaKohen, the actual one that actually go in there, the high priest, he got to have that same conviction within his mind when he go into the Holy of Holies. And David bringing it out, a point in his life where he was on that particular level. And then we read in Samuel, sometimes his children was called Kohanim, which is strange for a person coming out of Judah. But let's just read a little bit further.
We're in verse 3.
Yeah.
For thy mercy is before mine eyes, and I have walked in thy truth. I have not sat with men of falsehood, neither will I go in with dissemblers. I hate
right there. All right. Okay, before we get to the hate. All right. One thing we know right then and there. David is not satisfied with one thing. He said, test me. Check me out. A lot of times, who volunteer for a test? Unless they're sure of something. I know I don't volunteer for tests unless I'm absolutely sure that I can pass the test. Because usually when you volunteer for a test, you ain't writing it up. Somebody else is setting it up and setting the standards. And when they set the standards for you to, to apply to, then that's a little bit uncomfortable situation. But David's saying, look at not only, test me and try my reins. In other words, make sure that I'm strong enough, like I'm saying, because we have this saying, talking so cheap, people doing their sleep. So I'm not just talking this. I want you to test me, put me in the range, see how much I can stand. That's a tough prayer. But the priest got to be tough when he go in the Holy Holies that time. He can't go in there intimidated. He got to go in there dedicated at that particular time. Let's read a little bit further.
It reads.
6.
Verse
5.
5.
Yeah.
I hate the gathering of evildoers and will not sit with the wicked. I will wash my hands in innocency. So will I compass thine altar, O Yehovah, that I may make the voice of thanksgiving to be heard and tell of all thy wondrous works.
Okay.
Yehovah, I love the habitation of thy house and the place where thy glory dwelleth.
Hold right there. Now, that's something we always say a lot. All right. We love the habitation of the house, a place where thy glory dwelleth. And know what's so strange? It's almost reminiscent of what that prayer that Bilam said. How goodly are their tents. Of Israel, that tabernacle. How goodly are the tents of Israel, that tabernacle. How goodly are the tents of Jacob, that tabernacle of Israel. All right. So that prayer, hence, like I said earlier about Sukkot, we dwelt in tents. Bilam seen the tents that they was dwelling in and said, it's good, but you have something even better. You got a tabernacle. Well, hell is a tent, even though we would call it, the tent of meeting, or hell, and that was the one tent that Moses' tent was there at that same time, but they all dwelt in tents. And there's an ambiance of holiness looking from that particular area. And also, they had the Mishkan itself. Bilam recognized that was the item there, that they really are secure. And he's up in the mountain, looking down on them. And what we find here is that when we look at David, he's saying pretty much, in a place where thy glory dwelleth. He's talking about the tabernacle because he didn't have the temple in his time. And the tabernacle itself in David's time didn't look that great. For a good part of David's time, for a certain part of David's time, the actual tabernacle in the beginning of his reign was missing certain items. So how could it be the glory of God, where God's glory dwelleth at, and you're missing certain items? All right, but that's another story. So we got the 9th verse.
Verse 9 reads, gather not my soul with sinners, nor my life with men of blood, in whose hands is craftiness, and their right hand is full of bribes. But as for me, I will walk in mine integrity, redeem me, and be gracious unto me. My foot standeth in an even place. In the congregations will I bless Yehovah. Hallelujah.
All right, that's hallelujah. I'm just going to go straight to the 15th chapter of Psalms. And we'll conclude there. The 15th chapter goes along with Kedoshim, which means holiness. And it's holiness and sanctities. And it's talking about things, and when we talk about holiness and sanctities, we're talking about in a plural sense. Kadosh is holy. So Kedoshim is in the plural. So the things that you just read about is things that either keep you holy by not doing it, and certain things that you do, will allow you to be holy. So you got positive and negatives in that. But when they tell you what to abstain from, you're abstaining from certain things, you're separating yourself from certain things, more so in Kedoshim. So therefore, by separating yourself from those negative things, you become more holy. So this one, the 15th Psalm, go along with that. It's about, I think, 6 or 7 verses.
Psalms chapter 15, verse 1. A psalm of David. Yehovah, who shall sojourn in thy tabernacle? Who shall dwell upon thy holy mountain? He that walketh uprightly and worketh righteousness and speaketh truth in his heart.
All right, right then and there. He asked this question because that is where the highest spiritual area is. Who should be able to dwell there? And he doesn't talk about the earthly tabernacle, but he used that as a reference. Who should dwell there? And the quality of the individual that got to be there. That's what he's talking about. And, and then when you look at the Hebrew and stuff like that, he has a lot of great, when you talk about, who, Yagur, Yagur is like, almost like a stranger, a sojourner, in your tabernacle, and talk about in your holy mountain, saying not only there, but now I'm not only want to be able to dwell on the earthly thing, I want to be able to go and ascend even higher than that on your holy mountain. Because the tabernacle itself didn't necessarily was on a mountain. It could be on a level ground, because wherever the tabernacle was, the difference between the tabernacle and the temple was the tabernacle made the area holy, whereas the temple itself was placed on holy ground. And so the ground was hollow in that area. So David looking forward in that particular area there. All right. And then he says, Holek Tamim. All right. Holek Tamim, we know Holek is walking. All right. But Tamim, we got that term that's used there. Tom is like a wholehearted or plain person. Noah is called Tom. Jacob is called a Tom, a plain man dwelling in tents. All right. So Tamim, that means it means in the sense of integrity. I'm whole in that area. I'm not going to waver and dance from this and that and the other. I'm fully committed. All right, let's pick up the next few verses.
It reads,
3.
verse 2, right? He that walketh uprightly and worketh righteousness and speaketh truth in his heart, that have no slander upon his tongue, nor doeth evil to his fellow, nor taketh up a reproach against his neighbor, in whose eyes a vile person is despised, but he honoreth them that fear Yehovah. He that sweareth to his own hurt and changeth not. He that putteth not out his money on interest, nor taketh a bribe against the innocent. He that doeth these things shall never be moved. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. All right. So now we had a couple interesting things here, but out of to make this psalm so impactful, even though it's short, and you basically only have basically 5 verses in the psalm. In the 5 verses, all 613 laws is condensed in 11 different phases. When you look at it and analyze, I don't have time to do it now, but I'm saying when you look at the 613 laws, statutes, and judgment, 248 positives, 365 negatives, David pretty much condensed this in saying this is the type of person you need to be in order to be successful. And therefore, and he said he's actually true to his own heart. See, some people will say something, but they don't believe it and feel it in their heart. And they'll say it verbally, but it's not in their heart because they might figure it politically correct to say it at this particular point in time. David said, I'm not like that. So what we learned from the Kohen and Kedoshim, that he must exercise a pure heart, a love for the Creator, and he got to be brave enough to put his life on the line for his commitments. And that's what we got to be able to do. Be able to be brave enough and sure enough in righteousness, have enough faith in God that we could put our life on the line, for what we believe in. So, and I'm not saying, and I want to make sure I make this clear, because they're just saying, I die for my belief. No, I ain't trying to die for my belief. I'm just for me, myself. I'm not trying to die for my belief. I'm going to live for mine. Let somebody else die for their belief. I'm going to live for mine because we talk about a God, of the living and not of the dead. So with that saying, any mistakes been my own, and I greet everybody else. Early Shabbat Shalom and Shalom Aleichem.
Torah about Nasik, thank you for your insight, praying that the Most High God will continue to be with each and every one of us, and pray that the Most High...
Don't forget to support the station too, support the D.C.B channel, and also remember the event in May. All is welcome that can come there to the event.
Hallelujah, all are welcome. And I'll run off the commercial and thank you all once again. Shalom, right. Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom, Shalom, family. Congregation Bay D.C.B presents a day of praise to the Most High. Unity Shabbat Kun, we must rise. Date, May 27, 2023. Location, Shells Loft, Brooklyn. Located at 120 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Services will begin at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. To contact us for more information, you can contact us at 347-622-9090 or on our email, info@baydcb.org. Once again, Congregation Beit D.C.B. presents a day of praise to the Most High. Unity Shabbat Kum, we must rise. The date is May 27, 2023. The location, Shells Loft, Brooklyn. Located at 120 Hamilton Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. Services will begin at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You can contact us at 347-622-9090 on our email, info@baydcb.org. This is a time of praise and joy and coming together between brothers and sisters. All are invited. Come out with your best spirit of praise. Hallelujah.